Welcome, true crime enthusiasts and seekers of the dark truth. Before we delve into one of the most chilling cases to ever grip the nation, a story of youth, obsession, and an act so heinous it defies understanding, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button. Your support helps us uncover these narratives and explore the depths of human nature. Now, prepare yourselves, for we are about to journey into the heart of a darkness born from an unexpected source. The case of America's youngest female inmate. A tale of shattered lives and a chilling confession. The air in the courtroom was thick, not just with the stale scent of disinfectant and old paper, but with impalpable tension that vibrated against the very bones of everyone present. Every cough, every shuffle of feet, every whispered word seemed to amplify, echoing in the cavernous space. At the center of this maelstrom sat Alara Vance, her name whispered in hushed tones across the nation, a chilling paradox of youth and depravity. She was 17, her face a pale canvas framed by dark, unkempt hair that fell across her shoulders like a mourning veil. Her eyes, once described as the color of a summer sky, were now vacant, shadowed pools that reflected nothing, not even the flash of cameras or the accusatory stares of the gallery. She was, officially, America's youngest female inmate, convicted of a crime so brutal, so utterly devoid of mercy, that it had sent ripples of horror through every corner of society. The narrative of Alara Vance began not in a shadowy alley or a forgotten corner of the city, but in the seemingly idyllic suburbs of Willow Creek, a place synonymous with manicured lawns, two-car garages, and the quiet hum of suburban ambition. Alara had been an anomaly even then. Not disruptive, not rebellious in the typical sense, but profoundly introspective, often lost in worlds only she could perceive. Her parents, Sarah and Robert, were well-meaning but perpetually harried, their lives consumed by the relentless pursuit of professional success. Alara was their only child, a quiet presence in a house that always felt too large, too empty. She sought solace in books, in the intricate patterns of the backyard garden, and, as she grew older, in the digital ether of the internet. It was in this digital realm that she first encountered Ethan Cross. Their connection wasn't a whirlwind romance of stolen glances and whispered promises. It was built slowly, meticulously, through late-night chats in obscure online forums dedicated to philosophical discussions and obscure independent films. Ethan was 23, a university dropout with a sharp wit and a cynical charm that appealed to Alara's nascent intellectual curiosity. He painted himself as a misunderstood artist, a rebel against the mundane, a kindred spirit who truly saw her, unlike the superficial acquaintances of her school years. Their virtual bond deepened over months, evolving from intellectual sparring to an intense, almost symbiotic emotional dependence. Ethan's words were a balm to Alara's solitary existence. He praised her intelligence, validated her unconventional thoughts, and encouraged her to embrace her unique perspective. He made her feel seen, truly seen, for the first time in her life. This perceived understanding morphed into an intoxicating obsession for Alara. She lived for his messages, her phone a constant extension of her hand, each vibration a jolt of anticipated euphoria. Her grades, once respectable, plummeted. Her rare interactions with peers became even rarer. Her world had narrowed, converging entirely on the pixelated image of Ethan on her screen. Her parents, though concerned by her increasing reclusiveness, attributed it to the typical teenage angst and digital immersion. They issued gentle warnings about screen time, suggested extracurricular activities, but they failed to grasp the depth of the chasm that was forming between Alara and the reality they inhabited. They didn't see the feverish intensity in her eyes when she spoke of Ethan, or the way her breath hitched when his name appeared on her screen. The first time they met in person, it was electric, a collision of their carefully constructed digital personas with the awkward realities of flesh and bone. Ethan was taller than she imagined, with a languid grace and eyes that held a peculiar mix of intensity and detachment. Alara, usually reserved, found herself stammering, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. He took her hand, his touch sending a tremor through her, and in that moment, the virtual world dissolved, replaced by a hyper-real sensation of finally belonging. Their relationship escalated with alarming speed. Ethan became her entire universe. He introduced her to a world she'd only glimpsed through screens, smoky coffee shops, late-night art galleries, underground music venues. He spoke of grand plans, of leaving the mundane behind, of creating something truly meaningful together. He wasn't just a boyfriend. He was a mentor, a confessor, an oracle. And Alara, starved for connection, absorbed every word, every gesture, every subtle shift in his mood, as if her very existence depended on it. But beneath the veneer of artistic rebellion and shared intellectual pursuits, a darker current began to flow. Ethan was manipulative subtly at first, then more overtly. He began to isolate her, subtly undermining her relationships with friends, planting seeds of doubt about her parents' understanding, even criticizing her choice of clothes or music until her preferences mirrored his own. Her quiet introspection morphed into a profound anxiety, a constant fear of displeasing him. His unpredictable temper, his sudden shifts from charming affection to icy detachment, left her perpetually on edge, desperate to placate him, to earn back his approval. She started missing school with alarming frequency, fabricating elaborate excuses that barely held water. Her parents, frustrated and bewildered, threatened to ground her, to confiscate her phone, to cut off her internet access. These threats, however, only fueled Alara's desperate need to cling to Ethan, to the only person she felt truly understood her. She saw her parents' attempts to intervene not as concern, but as an oppressive force trying to separate her from her only source of genuine connection. The financial strain became another point of contention. Ethan, despite his grand artistic visions, had no stable income. He relied on Alara subtly at first, then explicitly for money for art supplies, for rent, for their dates. Alara, terrified of disappointing him, began to steal. Small sums at first from her parents' wallets, then larger amounts from her mother's jewelry box, pawning pieces she knew her mother rarely wore. The guilt was a dull ache, but it was overshadowed by the panic of Ethan's disappointment, the chilling threat of his withdrawal if she couldn't provide. The relationship, once a beacon of understanding, had become a suffocating cage. Alara was no longer the quiet, imaginative girl of Willow Creek. She was a shadow of herself, consumed by an all-encompassing need to fulfill Ethan's demands, to anticipate his moods, to be everything he wanted her to be. Her own desires, her own identity, had been meticulously chipped away, leaving only a hollow shell dedicated to serving his will. She was trapped, held captive not by chains, but by the invisible threads of a toxic dependency, meticulously woven by the man who had promised her the world. The innocence that once defined her was not merely lost. It had been systematically dismantled, leaving fertile ground for a darkness she never knew she possessed to take root. The stage was set, not for a tragic love story, but for a horrifying descent into the abyss. A journey that would culminate in a single, irreversible act that would shock a nation and forever brand Alara Vance as America's youngest, most chilling enigma. The echoes of her lost innocence would reverberate in the silent corners of her mind, a constant, mournful reminder of the path she had strayed from, a path that led directly to a cold, hard cell. The relationship between Alara and Ethan had mutated into something grotesque, a symbiotic nightmare where one fed on the other's fear and dependency. Ethan's control, once subtle, had become overt, his words laced with veiled threats and his actions designed to keep Alara in a constant state of anxiety. He had moved from being her confidant to her captor, though no physical chains bound her. The chains were forged from her own desperate need for his approval, a twisted affection that had eclipsed all reason. He began to introduce her to his circle, a loose collective of self-proclaimed artists, musicians, and free spirits who populated the fringes of the city's counterculture scene. To Alara, still so impressionable, they seemed exotic and sophisticated, their conversations brimming with abstract concepts and disdain for conventional society. But beneath the bohemian facade, there was a palpable undercurrent of cynicism and a disturbing lack of empathy. Ethan, in this environment, flourished. He reveled in the adoration of his sycophants, his ego expanding with every laugh at his biting jokes, every nod to his profound insights. It was during these gatherings that Alara began to witness Ethan's cruelty firsthand, not just directed at her, but at others. He would verbally dismantle someone for a perceived slight, mock their vulnerabilities, and revel in their discomfort. He called it truth-telling, a brutal honesty that was meant to expose the weaknesses of a hypocritical world. Alara, initially horrified, found herself internalizing his rhetoric, convincing herself that his harshness was a form of strength, a necessary evil in a world that demanded conformity. She started to mimic his cynicism, believing it made her sophisticated, made her more like him. Yet, deep down, a tremor of fear lingered, a quiet voice that whispered, "What if that cruelty is turned on me irrevocably?" The financial demands intensified. Ethan's artistic projects grew more expensive, his whims more extravagant. Alara's pilfering from her parents became a daily act, executed with a practiced ease that chilled her even as she did it. She felt like a phantom in her own home, slipping through rooms, her heart pounding, her fingers trembling as she relieved her parents of their cash, their jewelry, anything that could be converted into the currency that bought Ethan's fleeting attention. Her mother, Sarah, noticed the discrepancies. Questions were asked, veiled accusations hung in the air, but Alara's carefully constructed lies, fueled by fear and practiced desperation, managed to deflect them. The house became a battleground of silent suspicion and desperate denial. The emotional toll on Alara was immense. She slept little, haunted by nightmares that merged Ethan's charming smiles with his chilling pronouncements. Her appetite vanished, her body growing gaunt, her eyes perpetually shadowed. Her school attendance became sporadic, then non-existent. The school counselor called, her teachers expressed concern, but Alara deflected every inquiry, her voice flat, her eyes lifeless. She had become a master of emotional camouflage, presenting a blank facade to the outside world while inside, a storm raged. Then came the new variable in Ethan's life, a woman named Lydia. Lydia was everything Alara was not: older, confident, with a vivacious laugh and an easy charm. She was also financially independent, a fact that seemed to hold significant sway over Ethan. Alara watched, a knot of ice forming in her stomach, as Ethan's attention, once solely hers, began to shift. He spent less time with Alara, his texts became infrequent, his calls went unanswered. When he did grace her with his presence, he was distant, preoccupied, his eyes constantly scanning the room as if searching for someone else. The shift was agonizing. Alara's world, already fragile, began to crumble. The one person who had seen her, who had validated her existence, was pulling away, leaving her adrift in a sea of emptiness. She was consumed by a desperate, all-encompassing jealousy that burned like acid in her veins. She tried to confront Ethan, her voice trembling, her eyes pleading. He dismissed her concerns with a wave of his hand, calling her childish, possessive. He hinted that he needed space, that her intensity was suffocating. Each word was a dagger, twisting deeper into her already raw heart. Alara's despair morphed into a dangerous obsession. She began to stalk Ethan, following him to cafes, lurking outside Lydia's apartment, driven by a perverse need to confirm her worst fears, to witness the betrayal that was tearing her apart. Each sighting of him with Lydia, each casual touch, each shared laugh, fueled her rage, her sense of utter abandonment. The girl who once found solace in books now found it in the chilling fantasies of revenge that played out in her mind. The humiliation, the rejection, the feeling of being discarded like an old toy, festered within her, transforming into a toxic cocktail of fury and a profound sense of injustice. She had given him everything: her loyalty, her identity, her very soul, and he had cast her aside for someone else. The quiet, introspective girl was gone, replaced by a desperate, enraged young woman on the precipice of a terrifying transformation. The breaking point arrived with a phone call, not from Ethan, but from one of his friends. A snickering voice on the other end confirming what Alara had suspected. Ethan and Lydia were moving in together. The news hit her like a physical blow, knocking the air from her lungs. She stumbled, her world tilting violently on its axis. The betrayal was complete, absolute. All the promises, all the shared dreams, all the sacrifices she had made were nothing. She had been used, discarded, and now replaced. A cold, terrifying calm settled over Alara. The frantic desperation, the agonizing jealousy, the crushing despair, all coalesced into a singular, unwavering resolve. She felt a clarity she hadn't experienced in months, perhaps years. It wasn't about love anymore, if it ever truly had been. It was about retribution. It was about reclaiming something of herself, however twisted that reclamation might be. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat in her room, illuminated only by the faint glow of her phone screen, researching, planning. Her mind, once a canvas for intricate daydreams, was now a meticulous blueprint for a horrifying act. The details began to form, precise and chilling. The object, the location, the timing. Each element clicked into place with a terrifying logic. The girl who wouldn't hurt a fly, who cried over wilting flowers, was meticulously crafting a narrative of violence, a macabre ballet of vengeance. The echoes of her lost innocence were not just reverberating. They were now screaming, trapped within the confines of a mind consumed by a singular, destructive purpose. The quiet hum of Willow Creek was about to be shattered by a thunderclap of unimaginable horror, a testament to the crushing weight of obsession and the devastating power of a soul pushed beyond its breaking point. The day arrived with an ominous, almost theatrical stillness. The sky was a bruised purple, promising rain that never materialized, leaving the air heavy and oppressive. Alara moved with a chilling efficiency, her actions deliberate, devoid of hesitation. She left her parents a hastily scribbled note, a vague apology for something unspecified, a desperate, pathetic attempt at a goodbye that offered no real explanation. She knew what she was about to do, and a strange sense of quiet determinism had settled over her, replacing the maelstrom of emotions that had consumed her for months. Her target was a small, secluded art studio on the outskirts of the city, a place Ethan often used for his projects. It was remote, nestled behind an abandoned warehouse, far from prying eyes. She knew his routine, his habits, the precise time he would likely be there alone, lost in his self-important creative endeavors. The object she carried was inconspicuous, hidden in her oversized messenger bag, a tool as mundane as it was deadly, chosen for its weight, its blunt force, its terrifying efficacy. The studio was dimly lit, smelling of turpentine and stale cigarettes. Ethan was there, just as she predicted, hunched over a canvas, his back to the door. He didn't hear her enter, or perhaps he dismissed it as the wind. Alara stood for a long moment, watching him, the man who had promised her the world and then systematically dismantled her very being. The silence in the room was deafening, punctuated only by the distant hum of traffic and the furious pounding of Alara's own heart. When she spoke, her voice was a ghost of its former self, hollow and devoid of warmth. "Ethan." He stiffened, turning slowly, his face initially annoyed, then registering a flicker of surprise, followed by a condescending smile. "Alara? What are you doing here? I thought I made it clear we needed space." His tone was dismissive, an indifferent dismissal that instantly reignited the burning inferno of her resentment. He looked at her, truly looked at her for the first time in weeks, and a faint frown creased his brow. "You look awful. Are you okay?" The question, so hollow, so utterly devoid of genuine concern, was the final spark. It wasn't the rejection that hurt most in that moment. It was the casual, careless cruelty of his indifference. He didn't even care enough to feign concern. He just wanted her gone. The next moments blurred, compressed by the sheer force of adrenaline and a lifetime of pain culminating in one horrifying instant. The rage, held captive for so long, erupted. It was a primal, unthinking release, a desperate, final act of a soul pushed beyond its limits. There was a sickening thud, a sharp, guttural cry, and then a profound, terrifying silence. Alara stood over him, her chest heaving, her hands trembling, the mundane object now heavy with the weight of her deed. The world seemed to narrow to a single point, the vivid splash of color, the sudden stillness of the air, the scent of fear and something metallic. The anger that had consumed her for so long was suddenly gone, replaced by a chilling void. She felt nothing, absolutely nothing, neither triumph nor regret, just an immense, empty stillness. Then, a strange, almost dissociative calm settled over her. She looked down at what she had done, and instead of screaming, instead of collapsing, a cold, almost detached clarity washed over her. It was done. The torment was over. And in that horrifying vacuum, a perverse sense of satisfaction, of reclaiming power, began to trickle in. She pulled out her phone, her fingers steady despite the lingering tremor in her body. She didn't call the police. She didn't call her parents. She opened a familiar social media app, her finger hovering over the Create Post button. With a detached precision that would later horrify investigators, she typed out a message, brief and chillingly triumphant. It wasn't a confession in the traditional sense, but a declaration, a chilling whisper of vengeance revealed to the digital world. He got what he deserved. No more control. She even attached a blurry, ambiguous photo, taken from an odd angle, that hinted at the scene without explicitly revealing it. It was an act of audacious, almost childlike defiance, a desperate cry for acknowledgement, a warped form of showing the world her power, her freedom. She left the studio then, walking out into the oppressive evening air as if nothing had happened, her face a mask of serene emptiness. She didn't run. She didn't hide. She walked the streets, aimlessly at first, then with a growing sense of surreal detachment. The world seemed to carry on, oblivious to the monstrous act she had just committed. The digital confession, however, was not oblivious. It spread like wildfire, picked up by an anonymous user, then by true crime forums, then by local news outlets. The ambiguity of the image and the cryptic message fueled a frenzy of speculation. Was it real? A hoax? A cry for help? The police were alerted, tracking the IP address, zeroing in on Alara's location. She was found hours later, sitting on a park bench, watching the city lights flicker to life. She offered no resistance, no tears, no dramatic pleas. When the officers approached, their faces grim, their questions sharp, she merely looked up, her eyes empty but oddly resolute. "Is it about Ethan?" she asked, her voice calm, almost detached. "Because it had to happen. He took everything." The subsequent interrogation was a chilling testament to her composure. She recounted the events leading up to the act with an unnerving lack of emotion, a meticulous precision that stunned hardened detectives. She spoke of Ethan's manipulation, her isolation, the financial exploitation, the devastating betrayal. She didn't express remorse for the act itself, only a deep-seated regret for the life she had lost, the person she had been before Ethan. When pressed about the digital post, she simply stated, "I needed them to know. I needed to show them I wasn't weak anymore." The national media descended, their cameras flashing, their headlines screaming. "Teenage girl confesses to brutal murder. America's youngest female inmate." The dark side of digital obsession. Her face, once a quiet, unassuming presence, was now plastered across every screen, every newspaper, synonymous with a chilling depravity. In the courtroom, surrounded by the weight of justice, Alara Vance remained largely impassive. She watched the proceedings, the impassioned arguments, the emotional testimonies, as if she were an audience member to her own tragedy. Her parents, shattered and bewildered, sat in the gallery, their faces etched with grief, unable to reconcile the monster on trial with the quiet child they had raised. The verdict was swift and unequivocal. Guilty. The judge's voice, though solemn, held a note of weary finality. Alara was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, effectively a life sentence for someone so young. As she was led away, her small frame swallowed by the oversized prison uniform, she glanced once, fleetingly, at her parents, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes before they were once again shrouded in their familiar emptiness. Behind the bars of her cell, Elara Vance existed in a perpetual twilight, a living monument to the devastating consequences of unchecked obsession, manipulation, and the slow, insidious erosion of a young soul. The chilling digital post, the casual unveiling of her horrific act, became a macabre footnote in the annals of true crime, a stark reminder that even in the quiet suburbs, darkness can take root, transforming innocence into something truly monstrous. The whispers of her name would continue to echo, a haunting question mark over the depths of human cruelty and the unfathomable paths a broken heart can lead. And perhaps, somewhere in the silence of her cell, the echoes of her lost innocence still reverberated, a faint, mournful reminder of the girl she once was, before she became America's youngest, most chilling enigma.